welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you today on WJOPLP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9, and will be available on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm just delighted this morning to welcome back to the morning show a frequent and favorite guest, Reverend Rebecca Bryan. She became minister of the First Religious Society Unitarian Universalist Church here in Newburyport in 2018. She is only the 16th minister and the first called female minister in its 300-year history, which is pretty impressive. She serves as a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force here in Newburyport and is a past chair of the Newburyport Clergy Association. Last month, at the urging of her parishioners, she published a collection of sermons that she had delivered to her congregation, which is what she's here happily to talk about today. It's titled, let me show you, Guided by Love, a Minister's Thoughts on Love, Hope, and Justice. So first of all, Reverend Rebecca, welcome back, and thank you so much for taking time to be here to talk about your book.
Mary, it's so good to be back. You know I love our conversations, and a delight. Thank you for having me.
Well, I love our conversations, and I loved your book as well, and so I'm looking forward to talking to you about it. But before we do that, I had asked you before the show if you could tell me what it meant, because I'd never come across the phrase a called minister before. And you said I could ask you about
yes.
it.
Yes, you can.
So I'm asking, what does it mean to be a called minister?
In our faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism, every congregation is independent and self-run, so it really is a membership organization. And since ever in our tradition, hundreds of years, it is the congregation that says to a person, a clergy person, a minister, we see in you the minister that is who we are and who we're becoming. Yeah. And the minister says the same. So you're literally called, you're voted upon, you're chosen. It's a mutual choosing. So we're not assigned by any sort of higher up, but it's a covenant, a promise. It's a commitment to each other.
And a real resonance then, it sounds like, between the minister and the congregation.
Yes.
So that is really fascinating. You started in 2018, so I think it's a resonance that's clearly enduring. Well, let's talk about your book then, because as I said, I did very much enjoy reading your book. There are 25 sermons that are organized into sections on nature, theology, humanism, spirituality, justice, and a final section titled An Invitation. And they're all, I must say, extremely engaging. But since we don't have all day, unfortunately, I chose a few that I wanted to ask you about. But, Reverend Rebecca, they're all inspiring, they're thought-provoking, and they're filled with such abundant humanity. I totally understand why your parishioners wanted you to publish these gems and make them available to a general audience. But let's start with your invocation in the very beginning of the book about the importance and the power of stories. There is a story, as you say, and there's never just one story. Please tell us the story of why you chose to begin your book with what you call space for stories.
Thank you. So, yes, and it's the whole process of creating this book and how it came into being is in of itself an amazing story. And, I would love to read something. I don't know if I should do that in a little bit or share about the first sermon. But the reason, so there are a couple of reasons that I started with the sermon and the reflection. I really think of them more as like essays. And reflections, right? I appreciate how you said it changed your understanding of what a sermon is. And
absolutely.
I started with that for two reasons. So it actually was the first sermon that I delivered at the church once we had, now I'll get a little emotional, but which is good. It's a good emotions. After we had made the decision and the call had happened and we'd all voted and agreed, in February of 2018, I started in August. So there was sort of this transitional time. And this was the first sermon that I delivered. And it was really me saying, like, here we are. And I want to know who you are. I want to know your stories. I want to know the collective story of this congregation at that time, nearly 300 years old. And I want to share who I am. And together we are creating who we are. So it was that, to me, it's the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. And I know you have, in Space for Stories, you talk about how important it is to entertain multiple stories, to deepen our understanding of the world,
Yes.
and to launch ourselves out of any stereotypes that we might have if we only have a single story about ourselves, about another person,
That's right.
or anything really. And I know that I think it's come Sunday that you had something you wanted to read
Yes,
from.
I do.
And I think now would be a good time because I think come Sunday, well, you hear what it's about, but I think it opens up a new story about animals and their sensitivity and awareness and what we have in common with them. So please do. I think that'd be a great launching pad.
Okay, great. And we can get back to the dangers of a single story as well, and how important it is, I believe, for these times and justice.
Absolutely.
So, yes, so this is, sorry, I should have had this marked. Hold on. It is, it's entitled Come Sunday. So I used to, and hope to again when I'm on sabbatical, volunteer at Near Sanctuary, right, which is an equine rescue sanctuary in West Newburyport. It's how I used to spend every Monday. And I only stopped because of just how things can continue to evolve, and but it will be a place I return when I have a little more space. So this is a story about Monday, and I'll just start with the beginning of that day and read an excerpt from this. I wasn't feeling well that morning and easily could have justified staying home with a warm cup of tea, but something got me out of the door. As I now understand it, it is an act of grace that had me pull on barn boots and gloves and head over to the farm. I opened the gate to the paddock, home to the miniature donkeys. Sorry, I'm going to go back a little bit. I head over to the farm. Once there, I fell into my typical routine, and I nearly forgot that I almost hadn't come. Everything was normal until I got to the right-hand side of the pastures, where I immediately sensed something was awry. My own footsteps slowed, almost of their own accord. I paused, buckets of grain in hand. Something was different. The air was still. Nothing was moving. The animals, normally precocious, offered me none of their customary neighing and braying, expressing their eagerness to have their breakfast. Looking around, I saw every animal had their head hung low. I opened the gate to the paddock, home to the miniature donkeys, only to find that one had died in the night. Its pocket-sized body lay waiting to be found. I immediately realized that all of the animals knew, even the sheep, and their heads hung out of respect. I knelt down next to the animal and called the owner of the farm. As I waited for her to come, I suddenly realized that this donkey's mate was nowhere in sight. So I turned and I went into the small shelter in the paddock, and I found the other miniature donkey standing in the back of the shed, shaking. I later learned that she was the mother of the one who had died. I spent hours with her that morning, just holding her head as she leaned into my lap, resting all of her weight on my body. We prayed, we walked, we stopped, we cried, and we loved, just like any two people would do.
Yeah.
I was honored and in awe to be with her during this time, and my heart ached for her. There is no separation between God's creatures.
Yeah. It's so touching. And it really is a story that shifts our understanding of how sensitive animals are, which I think is a good thing for people to be aware of. I don't remember the person who wrote the book, but there's a book called Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are? And I think the same thing goes, are we empathic enough to know how emotionally sensitive and attuned animals can be? So I was very touched by it. It was one of my favorite sermons in your book. So thank you for sharing that with us.
It was a spiritual experience.
I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there are so many other sermons to talk about. I did want to talk to you about Space of a River.
Yes.
Which tells a story about your encounter. I think it was actually your second time at the Grand Canyon. And it is a site that only exceeds any expectations you might have Not everything does that.
Yes, that's right.
And you talk about the awe that it inspires in you and the experience of feeling that you're witnessing and participating in something that is holy.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you what it is about the canyon that provokes this kind of impact, the feeling of awe, and what's spiritual about it, and why do we need this kind of experience?
Wow, Mary. Well, the first thing that comes to me is that we need those kinds of experiences because we all, I believe, need to be brought to our knees sometimes. That we really need to recognize the incredible gift it is, an honor and responsibility to be alive. And, you know, we can get a little high on ourselves, particularly people. And when we recognize the, just amazing, universe and cosmos and of which we are a part, right? It's not out there. I mean, we are all interconnected. And it just brings back humility, reverence, gratitude, vulnerability, which to me is incredible strength. Right? All the bravado, that's just dangerous, if not even harmful. But yes, I had been to the Grand Canyon in my 20s, and we went back in 2019. And I've had this similar experience when I was at St. Francis's Hermitage in Italy. A very similar thing happened where I was stopped, right? So there's something about the sacredness, the energy, the space. And so there at the Grand Canyon, and again, also there when I was at the Hermitage up in the mountains with St. Francis's, when I walked in, so at the Grand Canyon, my husband and I walked into this, not shabby, but nothing special place. It was near the rim. It was not a big fancy hotel. And everything about it was imperfect, right? The windows were dirty, the screen was a little torn. It just was nothing fancy.
I know the place.
You know the place, right? A little dormitory-ish. Right? And I walked up to the window just delighted and excited, but in a more up here head, right? Of we're here. And it just took my breath away. And I just sort of fell into literally the wall and kind of slid down it. And Bart just said, okay, and walked out. And I just remembered that we're a part of this amazing universe. And I think we all need that.
We do, yeah. It makes me think about a few months ago, I had some people on the show talking about the Dark Skies movement.
Yes.
And I think that it's so easy, because it reminds me when I was in the Southwest and in an area where there weren't any street lights, and the sky itself on a starlit night has a similar kind of impact. It induces a feeling of awe. And has that same sense of it is an incredibly vast, incomprehensibly vast universe. But in positive psychology, they've done a lot of studying of the emotion of awe, and it alters our perspective, as you've just been, eloquently articulating. But they find that it also makes people more generous, more ethical. And it's interesting to me because instead of feeling like I'm so tiny, in the vast, it's time at the Grand Canyon. It's your sense of the vastness of time as well as of space. But instead, it makes us feel, even though we're a small part of something much vaster than our imaginations can even conceive of, it still feels like it's elevating of our existence. So it's an interesting emotion.
Because we are a part of it.
We are. Yes, that's
we
right.
aren't
as much as
apart
anything,
from
as
it.
much as anyone or anything.
As much as
is,
anything
right.
else.
We belong to the earth,
Right.
rather than the earth belonging to us.
Yes.
So, well, thank you for that.
Yes.
There was another sermon that I wanted to ask you about, and it's titled Unfolding, because it starts with a very attention-getting sentence, especially in something that is in a book of sermons, which is, God is not inevitable. Well, that got my attention.
Got mine too.
And it goes on to talk about process theology,
Yes.
which I confess I just was not familiar with, but totally resonated with. And so I was hoping, I know it's a vast topic,
Yes.
as vast perhaps as the Grand Canyon, but perhaps you could tell us even a little bit to whet our appetite to learn more about process theology and how God is viewed
Yes.
from this perspective.
Yes. So, wow, it changed my life. I had learned about process theology in seminary and intellectually, right? Wrote the papers, read the books, learned all about it. Not all about it, but, and it's also understood to be both a philosophy as well as a theology. He was an amazing human being, if people are interested to learn more about Alfred North Whitehead. And, started, and I'll answer your questions about what it is, but he started as a mathematician in Cambridge and taught there, was born in England, taught there, came to Harvard, and set out to come up with a couple of other scholars, sort of an explanation through logic for mathematics. And they came to understand that they couldn't. And that started him on a whole new trajectory.
Yeah.
Which is really recognizing that it is this sort of integrated understanding of the universe, of energy, of life, that it is, yes, it's logic and analysis and intellect and, right? It is the ethereal, it's the poetic, it's the aesthetic, it's the beauty, it's the imagination.
Yeah.
He was in a lot of relationship with Einstein, who shared these views. And so I learned about this intellectually in seminary, but it wasn't until the experience I write about in that sermon or essay that I really began to get it. And I was meditating one morning. This would have been in I don't recall exactly, but I was living at the time and serving a congregation in Brookline, Mass. And it was almost like a voice, and knowing it was like, God is not inevitable. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? And, I'd struggled for a long time with the God I was taught about, right? But finally I realized, we have to participate in this universe. So God is an energy of goodness. God is an energy of love, God is love. But that's not inevitable, that it will continue, that it will grow. We as humans have to choose that, participate in that, help that grow. That's an enormous privilege and responsibility. And just so this is how process theology understands God. God is relational. God is love. God is goodness. It's an energy that happens in relationship with others, with the natural world, within our own selves, deeply interconnected, and that everything we do is either building that, growing that, right, infusing that, or not. It's infusing otherwise. I think we see that today. And there's no act that's too small.
Yeah.
So it's our involvement in that. You were saying how we are a part of this amazing, it matters.
Yeah.
Because we are co-creating.
It's such a powerful idea. And the word that goes through my mind as you describe it is God is organic.
Yes.
Living.
Yes.
A living essence or energy. And because God is organic, God is dependent upon all living things for the qualities and characteristics and values and potentials for good or ill that we bring to that co-creation. It's a very profound idea. It's hard to get your head around completely, but it's also it's equally scary and appealing at the same time.
Yes.
Because it is our responsibility then.
Yes.
But because we all have the leverage to invest our own love in our everyday behavior, that's a tremendous amount of power
Yes,
as well, that we all can claim for ourselves if we choose to do, if we believe in it and we choose to do it.
That's
so
right.
It's such an intriguing idea. I do plan to learn more about it.
I'm glad. It is. It's profound. And the more that we really understand it and realize it, so much becomes revealed. Like currently in the last bit of time, I've really been understanding how important, back to the stories, it is to ask ourselves, what constructs am I living in?
Yeah.
Who defines love? Who tells me the rules?
Yeah.
And the more I realize, this is something I just subliminally have followed and believed to be true.
Yeah.
When in fact, do I?
Yeah.
And this is many things, right? But that's all part of that responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
And privilege.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, sort of related to what you're saying is another sermon that I was very much engaged by, and that's In the Companionship of Grief, which of course connects with Come Sunday, where we began.
Yes.
But in this you talk about how grief it's not a problem to be solved, it's not something necessarily to be gotten over, but, and I love the way you put this, you say it's an education in the heart and soul about what it means to be human.
Yes.
And instead of the stages of grief, like Kubler-Ross's model, you talk about Francis Weller's gates of grief.
Yes.
And it was the third of those gates at the Anima Mundi, or soul of the world, that I wanted to ask you to talk about, because I think many of us are struggling with the soul of the world as it's taking shape today. I know that I'm not alone in experiencing a profound sense of loss about what's happening in America right now, and that there appear to me to be so many values we may have assumed united us as Americans that appear to be deeply fractured right now and tipping us in the direction of an anti-democratic autocracy. So what are your thoughts on how we cope with and learn from and possibly transform this particular gate of grief, the animus mundi, which has to do with what's happening in the world that we're living in?
Yes. I just have so much reverence and respect for this topic about grief. Everything we're talking about, Mary, is so interconnected, right? Because what have we been taught about grief? And what if, rather than something to be overcome or a problem or it's a part of life, but it's also a gift. It's an opportunity because it will break us open. And yet, it's exactly what we need to be able to genuinely connect to the soul of this world. And when you're talking about, values, yes, values are at great risk right now. Values we assumed that we had all held in common. And if I can be so bold as to say, clearly not. And so understanding that, and soul is about people's essence and knowing the stories of the people that for whom this is the most difficult and whose lives are being torn apart by these things, that's what's going to get us to act from love, right? It's not an intellectual exercise. And I believe that the ability to hold such grief, hold such emotion, the more we can learn to do that, the more we can learn the skills to be embodied, to realize it's not going to kill us, and realize that it is actually that which brings us closer to others and ourselves and our humanity and our gifts, the better chance there is that things will actually be moving in the direction of goodness and love and relationship. So I think a lot of it right now for all of us is about learning the emotional skills, the spiritual experiences, being in community, allowing ourselves to learn it is safe, and we are brave and strong enough to feel that grief that will lead us to act and actually also lead us to great joy. You can't, how we feel anything is how we're going to feel everything. So the more we can experience grief, the more we will experience great joy. And
it's like a yin and a yang.
Yes.
It appears often like you can't have one without the other. Because if you live a life devoid of grief, and I don't know how anyone can, then you're clearly just numb
you are.
to a lot of what is happening in the world and probably in your own life.
You're defended.
So, yes, right, walled off.
Yeah, and part of the thing, going back to the Grand Canyon and awe and what you were saying about the night skies, and right, it's like it gets in under the defenses. And I literally am like, right, these defenses we get, whether they're here or here or here, or, right?
I think you're marking the chakras.
Oh, yeah, I am. Right? These things that we think keep us safe and actually just disconnect us.
Yeah.
And so yes.
What I pull deeply from what you're saying is to not go to a place of fear, which is inherently numbing. Fear is.
Yes.
But to boldly and bravely kind of explore and discover and go deeper within.
Yes.
And that's where you'll discover the psychological and emotional equivalents of the Grand Canyon and the night sky.
That's right.
So,
yes.
And there is
yes.
freedom there. And also knowledge and wisdom.
Yes, insight.
Absolutely. I think about the Buddhism and the Four Noble Truths.
Yes.
That, suffering comes from expecting things of life that life just cannot support, either through inaccurate understandings or grasping at things that, the nature of life is inconstancy, it's change. Isn't it? I don't remember which of the Noble Truths that is, but life is nothing but change.
That's right.
And the more that you can embrace that and sort of flow with it, the more you'll be in touch with reality.
Yes.
And it's only through real things, that you can find wisdom and joy and all of the deepest, best emotions. Have I understood you?
Yes. Everything in me is like, yes. And, I believe we need to be connected to ourselves. We must be connected to all.
Yeah.
Right? So in community, in connection with nature, in connection with Howard Thurman, as you know, one of my deepest teachers, what brings you alive, what lets you experience that. And, when I think also even of grief and everything we're talking about, having experiences, practices, places, people where we can access individually and collectively this space we're talking about, poetry, music, sailing, gardening, and ritual, right? Think of the Wailing Wall. Think of, what if we had the tools and rituals to externalize a little bit, to say to the world, and Francis Weller talks about rituals around grief, of communal shrines, of what's been lost and what's happening, and, that all gives us the strength and insight and wisdom to know how to respond to what's around us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that goes back to where we began this, to process theology, that as we do that, we help God grow up.
Yeah. Right?
We
participate.
Which is not how we're taught.
Oh, no.
We are
the
taught. Antithesis of how we're taught.
That's right.
We're little ignorant beings that must obey the rules. And so, but everything you're talking about means that as we mature and grow wise, we have the potential then to build a divinity in the world that has maturity.
Yes.
And is based on reality and joy and love.
Yes.
So that's
not power over.
Right.
No, I mean, we're really talking about power, right?
We are, absolutely.
So do we want to talk about, capitalism and all of the races, all that? That's all about power over? Or do we want to actually understand the power of which we are all a part and responsible and equally worthy? Yeah.
And that's about connection and shared abundance.
Yes.
Rather than the fear of scarcity, which I think drives a lot of the drive for power, whether it's for self-esteem, whether it's for material wealth, but there's some grasping. It's like...
of course.
To go back to Buddhism again, the hungry ghost.
Yes.
One of the realms where the more you get, the hungrier you get.
Yes.
Because it doesn't fundamentally satisfy your deepest spiritual cravings, so...
to be mirrors to each other, right? Imagine if every human had people from the moment until this moment look them in the eyes and say, I see you. That's all. We just need that.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
There's much healing in that.
There's so much healing in that.
Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot of territory.
Some of my favorite topics.
But I want to ask you, is there something that I haven't asked you about that you would really like to share with people?
Oh, gosh, so much. Yes. Let me just go back. I mean, I certainly want to thank my congregation and the support I've received for this, particularly. There were two Dianes, Diane Foreman, Diane Carroll, a member, and our congregational administrator, who were with me every step of the way, right?
Oh,
and the publisher, who said, absolutely yes.
Great.
And that this is not about me. This is about, these are messages that I believe need to be understood in the world. And back to that process theology, like, we all have our place and our gift. And if I can share using voice, if people can understand that religion is not all about oppression and, places that says, if whatever, you don't belong, or worthiness or goodness or sin, or these messages need to be in the world. And it does, my spirituality informs my work with justice. I can't not be involved in that. Once you get all this, you can't sit back and be like, there's nothing I can do. Doesn't really affect me. Yes, it does. So I think recognizing the deeply interconnectedness of everything we're talking about, right? Poetry and protest, you and me, the donkeys and the kings. So, and just anything people are willing to do to help get these messages out. It's a time when these aren't as many of the messages we're hearing, I shared that, like, on Amazon, if you could review it, please, it not only brings it up higher, but people started anonymously putting, like, low stars, right? And it's like, people, this is not what everyone wants to hear right now. And yet I believe it needs to be heard for the people who need to hear it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're very generous with your own personal stories about your life in your book, but you do it in a way that is so authentic. It gives you credibility, but it also, you talk about your own sometimes very deeply challenging and painful life experiences in a way that people recognize and can identify with, but will feel as though they never have been able to talk about those things in their own life because they either didn't get permission, were afraid of how they'd be received. So it has that impact as well on people to be able to reach deep into what it means to be a human being. And to be able to hear somebody with the courage and generosity of spirit to share those things. But then it's also, what's very clear in your book is how you have transformed the hard things that you experience into a building of wisdom and grace and empathy and generosity to share with people what you've learned and how you've changed and how you've grown, so it becomes a model of how we can use those experiences in our own lives, that it's speakable. And not only is it speakable, but there are many riches that can come from tough things that we go through in life. They're the building blocks of understanding. And love, which is the fundamental message of it. It is called, after all, Guided by Love, everybody. And it's meant literally.
Yes, it is. Back to process theology. That's right.
Well, do you have, I know you had an event at the Unitarian Church in early May. Do you have other events that people might want to know about coming up?
Yes, well, yes, and I also welcome them. I really hope people know that. I'd love to talk about these messages and help people explore them. I'm hoping to do that at the 2 local bookstores, also where you can find the books, and at other UU congregations where I have natural connections.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But anywhere people want to be inspired, perhaps to think a little differently and be guided by love, that's where I want to be going. So the dates are being set for the fall, and I'll make sure people know about it.
Oh, excellent.
And and get it to you and get it out as much as I can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I should also add, there's a lot of very profound ideas, and clearly, as we've been saying, it's incredibly entertaining as well.
Good. It's all part of it.
There's funny
I'm
things
glad.
in there.
There are funny things. There need to be funny things because it's all of it, Mary.
Humor is redemptive.
Humor is healing and a gift.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Reverend Rebecca, I can't thank you enough. It's been just glorious to talk to you. And thank you for
Mary.
writing the book and sharing these gems. Thank you to your congregation.
Thank
for
you. And yes,
encouraging you to be out there with it.
Yeah.
So that's it for today, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 till the morning show. Till then, everybody, please be well.